famine of the word is coming where we won't be doing this much longer. There's new provisions in with the Zionist tube, and with the Zionists already running TikTok and soon VPNs as this goes into. Shalom, first and foremost, like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth in sincerity, and shout out to the Akians out there in the four corners of the earth proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, Brakatum. It's all about track and trace, having a tracking device inside of everyone, better known as the MOTB. And it's coming. And we can see it with these newer bills that are coming out, and then they're looking to ban VPN, which is something you might have used if you're in places like England where they totally ban what you can and can't look at or even talk about, but they're looking to get rid of VPNs because it's a way of hiding your IP address. They want everybody identified. It's all about identification, censorship, etc., which will cause a famine of the word.
Guys and gals, me Mutahar, and oh boy, would you look at that. It looks like they're actually headed towards banning the goddamn VPNs in our world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pretty alarming uptick into what's been going on, but let me just basically fill you in. The last 2 years, we've been talking about the internet being like, regulated to the point that accessing basically any website is going to require you to whip out your wallet and show your identification. Now, you might be like, but Muda, what's the problem with that? Okay, we gotta protect the children. When you go to a bar, Muda, don't you know that they ask for your ID before they serve you a drink? Well, first off, if you look as old as me, they never fucking do that. But second of all, when I show a bartender my driver's license, the bartender does not whip out the phone, take a photo of it, and keep that inside their records 100%. They usually just glance, they see, oh, hell yeah, Mr. Muda is over the age of 18. He can guzzle a nice, delicious bottle of beer. But of course, obviously, when the government asks you or a website asks you for ID to prove you're 18 plus, they don't just delete that information. Sometimes they leave it in their servers long enough that it gets exploited by a bunch of hackers, and now I gotta worry about my fucking credit rating getting tanked because some guy has my information to do God knows what they want with it. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, obviously I think internet censorship, internet age verification, any of the stuff is wrong. Now, ultimately, the end, people always say, Muda, what about the kids? Very rarely do I whip out the fuck them kids meme. But to give you an idea, listen, if you don't care about your children, I don't care about your children. I only care about my children in this case. Really, if you care about the kids, please be a goddamn parent. We do not need the government jumping in, basically adding in these blocks online, because you can't fucking do your job after making a child, okay? You have done one of the most sacred and important things in human biology. Take care of it. The reason these laws are being made is not because the government cares about kids. Remember, the UK government does not care about kids. They had their whole issue with,
because they had them vaccinated.
We have an entire government in North America that does not care about releasing files specifically related to the abuse of children so we can go after the people that have actually harmed children. None of these governments give a shit about children, okay?
That's true.
If you care about kids, but government don't care. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to the meat and potatoes. So anyways, one of the reasons why I'm making this video too is because ultimately I want to show you the absurdity of the situation and to sort of raise awareness into what I think is probably going to be the death of the internet as we know it. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, again, to look inside the UK Parliament, again, this is the government of the United Kingdom. And again, I know that I'm not a United Kingdom resident, but remember, I'm also in the Commonwealth. Okay, I'm in Canada, right? The UK has some strength here, as sad as it is. But ultimately, if it happens in one big country like the UK, you bet your ass it's going to happen everywhere. If you think you're safe, because you're an American,
the Babylon,
remember,
and Babylon is daughter Babylon.
Like age verification to access
aka America's daughter Babylon.
With the adult websites, because ultimately it's an easy dig. Hey, you don't want kids getting access to adult movies, and that's pretty true and upfront, right? Most people, if not all, genuinely don't want kids to access unfiltered pornography on the internet. But what happens when the vagueness of these laws start reaching out to other platforms? Platforms that probably do more harm getting banned than good, because they're ultimately sharing information freely for people. Ultimately, it's a very, very slippery slope into censorship, into control of information, and ultimately monitoring what you do on the internet without your consent. So going into this amendment over here, because the internet bans in the United Kingdom are so bad that, again, companies like Pornhub have basically stopped serving UK residents. 4chan has stopped serving them. A lot of platforms have just stopped because even if they're not, adult providers, they fall under some weird laws that, put a lot of blame onto them. And a lot of the UK companies, or the Ofcom, the actual office that, verifies and runs this stuff, they've been running lawsuits internationally against places like 4chan and the Kiwi Farms, for instance, and they've been, pretty much getting so fucked to the point that they're being countersued. It's an insane situation to witness. But anyways, if you look at these websites over here, Clause 27, action to prohibit the provision of VPN services to children in the United Kingdom. So they know that their laws are so bad, that it's so unenforceable, that many people in the United Kingdom have been just running VPN. So I think there was something like a 6,000% spike as soon as these laws came into effect, where UK residents were like, all right, download a VPN, bypass these shitty laws. Now, ultimately, if you're using things like free VPNs, which in this case could be a lot of organizations just stealing your information, pretty much because most people don't understand, A, how a VPN really works. You're just running all your traffic through other servers anyways. But because it's free, they just want to access their porn, for instance. They fire on a VPN. Maybe they just leave that VPN running, so it's just grabbing information off. Not a good thing. But ultimately over here, within 12 months of the day on which this act is passed, for the purpose of furthering the protection and well-being of children, again, the government does not care about children, okay? No government really actually cares. This is just a way for them to push shitty laws. Make regulations which prohibit the provision to UK children of a relevant VPN service. So the child VPN prohibition. So the regulations may make provisions for the provider of a relevant VPN service to apply to any person seeking to access its service in or from the UK age assurance, which is highly effective at correctly determining whether or not that person is a child. B, must apply the child VPN prohibition to the provider of any relevant VPN service which is, or is likely to be, offered to market it to persons in the UK, provided to a significant number of persons. So basically any popular online service, right? Now again, what they talk about over here with age assurance is there's kind of two ways to do this, right? One of them is utilizing sort of an AI scanning feature. So you know how you get like your face is scanned and sometimes you have to like blink or do something to show that you're not like a picture? That'll be used through an artificial intelligence and the AI will then verify as an adult. Sometimes that can fail because the AI can mischaracterize you as a child. Sometimes it can mischaracterize a child as an adult, okay? These things are not perfect. Arguably, what will probably be used here is the tried and traditional, show us your driver's license, show us your papers, please. Now the problem is, showing your papers to any service and imagining that they're not going to delete that within 24 hours is a statistical impossibility, it seems, because of so many of these database hacks that have been going on, okay? So now you have to provide your ID to use a VPN. Now the issue with this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, is you're basically letting the government create a physical, like a digital trail onto what you do. They can kind of already do that with, trackers and internet service providers, but ultimately, privacy-focused tools like VPNs are utterly meaningless if all of a sudden the information that is attached to you is directly connected to your real-world ID with the profile that you're using. That is never going to fly. Now, it's kind of insane because I feel like the government just doesn't understand VPNs, right? We're going to get to a point where a lot of people are going to get so frustrated because internet access is going to be so annoying that they might actually have to start looking up things like tailscale. Now, this is a quick start guide on how to make something known as a tailnet. Now, if you follow these 6 directions, and, well, they're a little bit more complicated than just 6 directions, you can create yourself your own tailnet that you can connect to with your mobile devices, your computer devices, and basically get your own VPN, your own place. So basically you make a tailnet in a country that is not censored yet. So if you're from the United Kingdom, you might have to make a tailnet that basically takes you out of this area, makes you connect to servers, say, in something like Los Angeles, and then you can access the internet because for now, most of the internet, in fact, none of these laws seem to actually have an effect in the state of California. This is the issue with the internet right now, okay? For instance, if you're in the state of Texas and you want to watch porn for whatever reason, right? Let's say you don't want to give your ID, right? You're some guy sitting in Austin, you're like, I just want to nut right now, I don't want to give the government my ID, potentially have that shit leaked. You know what they have to do? They have to think, all right, let's just VPN myself to like Tamaulipas, let me VPN myself to maybe San Diego, and then I'll go through that way. But if you have to give your VPN company in the future, not saying this will pass in America, hopefully it won't, hopefully, then they'll still have some idea of what you're doing, right? Because, hey, this person has a VPN account, this is what the account is tied to, and of course in a country like the United States, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, you have to fork over VPN information when the government requests it. But again, for a lot of people that really do care about their privacy, I don't know what the government is going to do about shit like Mulvad VPN. Now, this is Mulvad VPN. I've promoted this plenty of times. I am not sponsored by this company, nor do I really want to be sponsored. They probably wouldn't know what my account is because you don't even have to provide them information to make an account. I have shown you on my channel, using cryptocurrency like Monero, I was able to pay for access to this VPN. What the fuck is the government going to do about a company that doesn't take any information to begin with? Is they going to be blocking the traffic to this area? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Are we entering?
So you see how everything's going into the twilight zone. That pretty much, though, it's not just enough that you log on and you say you're incognito. I remember earlier, like there's Google Incognito, right? But you see how this is becoming where everything has to be scanned through digital ID, and you got to, like hold the ID in front of your face and move it slowly towards that. I had to do that for SSI information. Just more and more bullshit, right? But that's just it, though. That's going to cause a famine of the word, where we're not going to be able to upload videos as easily as we have. So get this while you still can, because we ain't going to be on here forever. And once that's gone, you ain't going to be able to find us out on the streets, because all hell's going to be breaking loose anyways if it's not already started. Which you can see clearly, we are in the beginning of Jacob's trouble. YouTube's compliance with Israeli ban violates press freedoms, Al Jazeera says. So like everything else, it looks like Al Jazeera has been banned from Zionist Tube. Al Jazeera Media Network denounced YouTube's compliance with the Israeli decision to ban its channels, calling the move violation of media freedoms and international standards. Because like everything else, you cannot have anything that doesn't support the Israeli state. You can't say anything about these small hats, especially if you're in the bigger news agency. Israeli authorities earlier this week decided to block broadcasts from Qatar-based Al Jazeera and Lebanon's Al Maidan for 90 days, according to the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. And Al Maidan also did a lot of news out of Syria as well. And you already know that Israeli state has control over Syria. That's why they control one side of it, and that's why the Syria really doesn't do anything about the southern part of it that Israeli state keeps on taking. Israeli state occupied Palestinian territories as well as land in Syria and Lebanon for decades, and has rejected withdrawal and the establishment of independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital along the pre-67 borders. So anything that goes against that, hey, as of 1100 hours, which is Greenwich Mean Time, there has been no reaction from YouTube management. So, like everything else, Al Jazeera has been banned from Zionist Tube. Don Lemon arrested by federal authorities over Minnesota church protests. Again, we tell you not to get involved with this shit. This whole thing is staged, it's coordinated, so that way they could, bring in more censorship, on what you can say, what you can post. Well, this somebody, that's in the news area, right? Former CNN anchor Don Lemon was arrested by federal authorities late Thursday night on charges that violated federal law when he entered the city's church in St. Paul and shoved a microphone in people's faces to live stream reactions that activists stormed the church on the 18th of January. So just trying to get interviews, which he was doing his own journalism. Because sometimes you're not covered, but so here's a little bit of it.
What do you think of this? I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt.
This is somebody who obviously wanted to be interviewed.
But there were folks who will say, I have to take care of my flock. Okay, but listen, we live there's a Constitution and the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ. I want you to please don't push me. We're here to worship Jesus. Yes. That's why we're here. Okay, that's why we're here. That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this.
Yeah, they're 501c3. They're not allowed to speak against any authority.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
it. Yeah, hail Satan, because that's who they really worship. Because ain't nobody in heaven going by the name of JC. Iman Omar brutally mocked for response when asked about staged skirmish. So, these crisis actors. Extremist Somali Democrat Omar faced relentless mockery Thursday after being asked why she reacted so oddly when she was sprayed with an unknown substance by a weirdo at a town event earlier this week. So in other words, just like, how they caught the guy on CNN faking the news. Well, they are now starting to question that. It's like, this looks like bullshit. It's totally staged. You can tell these are crisis actors, just like went into yesterday. So this is
ICE cannot be reformed.
Yep, ISIS.
It cannot be rehabilitated. We must abolish ICE for good.
Yep, totally staged. Crisis actors.
And DHS Secretary Kristi Noem must resign
Gotta give you a
or
show.
face impeachment. I don't know.
Oh my God, he sprayed something on her.
I need a napkin to know nothing. No, we will continue.
No. You're fine. You need to go get checked. No,
We will continue. These fucking assholes are not going to get away
you
with
need
it.
to go get checked. You don't know what
Either way, though, not even good acting. But that's what they want you to believe, right? But we don't get involved in this shit, see? You know, we're not running on emotion. That's what makes us different from the rest of Jake, who does run on emotion, right? Ukraine, Russia agreed to short-term energy truce. Oh, okay, so here we go. I guess Trump finally did it. It wasn't in 24 hours, more like nearly 14 months. On Thursday, unconfirmed reports claim that Russia and Ukraine agreed to short-term energy truce. The deal was brokered during negotiations in the United Arab Emirates. The pause will continue for the duration of ongoing negotiations. Donald Trump later explained that Russia signed on the truce. I personally asked President Putin not to fire against Kiev and the cities and towns for a week during this extraordinary cold, the president said. So, like everything else, though, you know, Trump attempted to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine, but Kiev and Moscow remain far apart on several key issues. The Kremlin said they believe Trump is now rushing to complete a deal to end the war. So, like everything else, though, man of peace, you know, by threatening war against Iran while pretending to bring peace in Ukraine. Ready for de-escalation. Zelensky ready to accept energy ceasefire. Putin will. If Russia does not strike our energy infrastructure, generation facilities, and other energy assets, we will not strike theirs, Zelensky told reporters in Kiev. We want to end the war, and we are ready for de-escalation steps. So, like everything else, you know, that's the so-called negotiations, and here's this douche.
And I personally asked President Putin not to fire into Kiev and the various towns for a week, and he agreed to do that.
Oh, you're doing such a good job while threatening Iran.
You're not going to get that, and he did it, and we're very happy that they did it.
Yeah, you believe he's a man of peace, right? Trump declares Hamas will disarm or else, as resistance says it never agreed. Hamas officials said proposal for surrendering and decommissioning weapons was never even presented to us. So, you know, Trump is claiming things that aren't even there. Trump went on to say that Hamas was a big factor in getting all the hostages back in order to, you know, there is no hostages. But nonetheless, though, you know, he claims a lot of things. And he just says things just out of the blue that ain't even accurate. Israeli terrorists set Palestinian homes on fire in Jerusalem. Israeli terrorists set fire to Palestinian property late on Wednesday in the Kaha al-Saida Bedouin community northeast of occupied East Jerusalem. The attacks came after terrorists blocked the only road leading into the area, restricting the movement of its residents. Following the terrorist raid against Kalat al-Saida, Israeli terrorists and military vehicles stormed the area. Yep, as you can see how one-sided this is, right? And like everything else, though, you know, Trump still continuing his threats against Iran, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who recently resigned, well, she had a few things to comment about it as this goes into. So it's getting very interesting here while pretending to play peace. He's also threatening war with Iran and Greenland and Mexico and Cuba, going all out while pretending to bring peace.
Well, things are absolutely cooking, and not in the best of ways. As a lot of people are saying, what in the world's going on here? As gold and silver prices are hitting the roof.
Yeah, the economy is tanked.
A key indicator of war. And it definitely looks like the storm clouds are gathering, especially right now over the Middle East, as Donald Trump is sending a huge armada. The propaganda in Western corporate mainstream media is picking up, and it's getting pretty serious here, as it looks like Donald Trump retreated in Minneapolis and is going all in on Iran. His latest statements are very eye-opening, to say the least here, as of course Ron Paul has been very critical of it, as well as Congresswoman MTG that came out and gave her assessment to why this insane policy is actually moving forward. No, not a fan of the Iranian regime. Obviously there's some key problems here, but the propaganda, the moves that are being made here, clearly need to be calculated. We need to think about this, especially when it comes to disrupting oil markets, global
At least
economies,
the flock shall draw them
in the
out.
scale of what looks like some very big economic, cultural, and political tumultuous times. Why now? Something important to ask here. We're going to talk about that and a lot more all here on this.
Because Israeli state says.
The video, subscribe. The indicator of a big conflict ahead of us, and that's what some people are saying. Now, China also decided to block silver from the world. They produce and are able to process the vast majority of it. And when they say, yeah, we're just not going to release it, you need it in solar panels, you need it in computing, you need it with the help and development and the kind of increase when it comes to the ever so technocratic AI digital space. It's like, okay, now there's a mad dash for it, there's a big demand for it. As people are saying, this is the type of ish you see right before there are riots in the streets and people starving. And war. War is another indicator. I mean, if you look at economies, if you look at geopolitical situations, historically, it always tells a tale of trade routes, as trade has been a major key point of conflict for Trump with all the tariffs that he's been implementing, that he's been imposing. There's always economic upheaval, there's a lot of political unrest, and then there's wars. That's usually how it plays out. That's how it always plays out. CNN now. At ground zero for Iran protests, Iran shoppers voice frustration with the Iranian government. Again, not a fan of the Iranian government, but the levels of propaganda are getting so intense that I'm even having some of my staff come to me like, look at the poor people of Iran. And I'm like, I get it. Not fun, right? There's also regimes in Europe that are arresting people for their political thoughts and expressions peacefully. They're stealing their stuff. They're jailing people, right? Are we going to save the people of Britain because a guy called someone a bloke? I literally interviewed someone randomly in the street walking by and they go, oh, I got arrested for calling someone a bloke. Literally happened. Had their lives ruined and destroyed by the state here as the government there says, what are your political ideology? Okay, now we're going to see if you actually get justice here. Oh, you're on the right. Oh, you expressed something that hurt someone's feelings? Jail. Now, again, some people are reporting the situation in Iran is a lot more serious. CBS News is warning 20,000 dead. Now I'm seeing other people saying 30,000 dead. Unconfirmed reports, we don't know. We don't know. I wish we did. And listen, governments arresting people and taking them out because of their speech is illegal and wrong. But I don't think the West has the best type of framework now, as of course we're censoring and arresting people all over Europe for the slightest of offenses of mentally unstable people being butthurt by them. I'm sorry, that's not a precursor for arresting someone. Now again, this is not about freedom. It's not about liberty. It's not about... And again, all this kind of conversation is very
so you can see how they're going after the freedoms.
Right? We will call panic. People are like, you're crazy. It's one and done. Trump's one and done. Trump's just going to bomb them one time, and that's it. And it's done. Look, the greatest military success ever. I'm saying it's not one and done. It's not one and done until there's regime change. Regime change is the end goal. Why? Israel wants to dominate the entire area. And that's exactly why we are doing this on their behalf. There's no other reason, geopolitically, strategically, to be implementing such grand amount of resources as we have already spent billions of dollars on this. And that's a very similar point that MTG made. Ron Paul made a very interesting point as well. We're going to be playing those videos. Before we do, just really quickly, check out wearechange.shop. It's our shop.
Right,
it's literally a couple feet away from you, right? In Naconesis, Berberine, TMG, and some of these things might actually hurt you if you are not supposed to be taking them. So do your own research before putting anything into your body. And then he says green tea all the way at the bottom.
Where she is.
As it has a very powerful antioxidant.
Well, I'm glad I'm fast forwarding this.
That's why Israel's saying no. And it's not Trump, it's Israel. Israel's coming in and they're saying, Trump, you better tell them to get rid of one of the things they can defend themselves with. You better tell them right now. Trump's like, okay. I'm sorry, but that's not what I voted for.
We are entering a nuclear war. The world
there it is, nuclear war.
The entire world is going to erupt. And you want to know the people that are cheering it on right now? Their tune is going to drastically change the minute we start seeing flag-draped coffins on the nightly news, on Fox News that brainwashes all the baby boomers, and on CNN that brainwashes all the Democrat baby boomers. And that is exactly how this is going to go down.
Now, hopefully that doesn't happen. That's a little bit more of a kind of hyperbolic, a little sensationalistic type of take here, but the fact is, it can. It can happen like that. And because it can happen like that, that's not good. It's not a situation that, again, is probable, but there's a small percentage that it's likely to happen, especially if there's a cascading event, especially if you're on just a screw it, we're taking the offensive here. Anything and everything could happen, especially with how unpredictable and how fast everything is moving here. As Iran just announced they're going to be conducting military operations in the Strait of Hormuz starting next week. Lots of military operations and drills and exercises, usually a precursor towards larger military action, or an excuse to use larger military action. As the Iranian regime says, if pushed, it will defend itself and respond like, quote, never before. Tucker Carlson was previously talking about how the Israeli military officials were barging into meetings at the Pentagon, making demands, telling America what to do. And obviously, that's kind of what's happening here. And again, listen, Israel's coming out and saying, look, they have ballistic missiles. They get a nuke from North Korea, they'll bomb us, and they blow us up. We've got to stop them now. That's the Israeli perspective. And they're not wrong. The Iranian perspective is, this is the only deterrent we have. There's a reason Israel's really mad at Pakistan, but not bombing Pakistan and attacking Pakistan, because they have nuclear weapons. Turkey as well. There's a lot of tension between Turkey and Israel. Israel wants to be dominant in the region. And it's pretty clear Iran is standing in their way of doing that. They're the ones stopping the domination, the cooperation of a greater Middle East in their vision, as they want to be the #1 hegemonic power in their region. And obviously that is their goal. Let's not kid ourselves here. I would argue, for the best of the Israeli people, that might not be the best approach. Right? Now again, there might be a potential naval blockade. We're going to see what happened. The European Union just recognized the Iranian RGC as a terrorist organization. Again, as Europe is literally just nationalizing
just part of the U.S.
African and Middle
stooges.
Eastern migrants that went into their countries after the last wars that we started. Oh yeah, a migrant crisis because of all the Western interventions. Look at that. Spain's nationalizing 500,000 illegal aliens. And then they're going to be able to have European citizenship and go anywhere and everywhere in Europe. Yeah, how nice. How nice of them. As we're censoring speech here in America now, critical of the country that I just mentioned. Oh yeah, look at that. If you appreciate these type of videos, which risk censorship.
So, like everything else, though, you know that the Zionists are controlling what you can and can't see. Zionist Tube, so we'll just see if this video goes through on Zionist Tube, but I'll still try, you know, because, hey, what else am I to do except warn, right? Warn the flock. Threatening Iran and its leader is playing with fire. Chup and his ilk cannot contain, you know, because they are playing with fire, and like everything else, though, they're going to lose, and the scriptures tell you that they're going to lose. You know, that Babylon the Great does get destroyed. After President Trump announced on social media that a massive armada is currently on its way to Iran, social media had been buzzed with speculation that full-scale war is imminent. Iran, as they rightly emphasize, is more prepared than ever before. After a brief, highly consequential 12-day war imposed against Iran last June by the U.S. and Israeli state, one that ultimately ended with the Israeli state pleading for a ceasefire, one sobering conclusion appears to have settled in both D.C. and Tel Aviv. Even a limited military response exacts costs that are just simply unacceptable. So like everything else, though, they can't wait, you know? Sustained attempts have been made to keep millions of Iranians trapped in a perpetual state of war, crippling the economy, undermining stability, and preventing business from making long-term plans as uncertainty and unpredictability persist. And they're hoping to incite riots in there to try to destabilize them. And they've been failing to do so ever since. But they're still, you know, going in because, oh, well, they haven't agreed, you know, to the nuclear program, because now he's just threatening that because that other shit didn't work. They caught on to it, and they put a stop to it. U.S. military ready for action against Iran. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, the fucking douche, prepared to deliver whatever President Trump orders regarding Iran as the armada moves towards the region. Speaking at a cabinet meeting on Thursday, Hegseth, the fucking douche, warned Iran against pursuing nuclear weapons. So here we go again. We are prepared to deliver whatever the president expects of the War Department, he said. Hegseth, the fucking douche, recently, in recent operation that captured Venezuela president, so basically, they got their egos high, because they were able to subdue. And I guess they said that Iran would suffer the same consequences as Venezuela. So, let me get this straight. They think that they can just fly in to use some sort of special stunning weapon, and that the IRGC will stand down and let some SEALs go in, kidnap the Ayatollah undetected, and just leave. That's what they're trying to tell people, right? To suffer the same fate as Venezuela. And you can see how ludicrous that is, right? But that's what he's saying, He talks so much shit. And then this happening, right? Because we told you time and time again that, Syria is a key point of the Valley of Jehoshaphat. Syria's al-Jalani turns to Russia amid SDF clashes and Israeli incursions. Wednesday visit to Moscow was the Syrian president's second visit in less than a year. Syrian President al-Jalani on Wednesday made his second visit to Russia since he assumed power nearly 14 months ago. The two sides attempted to repair relations and decide on Russia's future military presence in Syria. I want to congratulate you on the fact that the process of restoring the territorial integrity of Syria is gaining momentum, Russian President Vladimir Putin told al-Jalani at the outset of their meeting. In recent days, the U.S.-backed, largely Kurdish-populated Syrian Democratic Forces was at the forefront of the fight, which they were never fighting ISIS. They were a part of ISIS. They were just holding them and training them, because those were ISIS training camps. And I think that they're going to try to use them to cause incursions into Iran, send more Daesh terrorists among the rioting. Has faced a rapidly advanced by Syrian government forces into the area they had controlled since 2012. Hadn't controlled since 2012. Al-Jalani told Putin that Russia plays an important role in stabilizing both Syria and the region as a whole. So, like everything else, though, they're looking. Magog will be a guard unto him, and there's even more. Why West Asia cannot do without Russia. So there we go. From Damascus to Abu Dhabi, Moscow's quietly positioned itself as an indispensable actor in the region's politics. Over the recent days, Moscow has hosted the leaders of two West Asia states, Syria and the United Arab Emirates. Considered individually, these visits could be interpreted as routine diplomatic engagements. Viewed together, they form a clearer and more consequential picture that West Asia continues to gravitate towards Russia as a necessary point of coordination. So they are, because this is the only one that's going to protect them from the Israeli states and its ambitions to gain that. Not to mention, Syria really does not have a problem with Iran. Al-Jalani is not going to have a problem with Iran, although, at the same time, though, certain ISIS members will still be used by the U.S., and that's why those ones are being transferred to Iraq, but the rest are going to stay with al-Jalani in Syria. So you can see how, everything, is falling into place, and that the least of the flock is going to draw everyone in. I'm going to end it on the Syrian Kurds, but, it tells you that, again, that their habitations will be desolate because of them, right? And that it is the least of the flock that shall draw them out into this greater Israel project, which will cause the entire region to be lit up. Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 20. Therefore hear the counsel of the Most High that he has taken against Edom and his purposes, that he has purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate because of them. So pretty much, though, you can see that as this is forming, well, they also, before the war finally comes out, they're going to have to do something to, stop us from teaching. A famine of the word has to happen before the MOTB can come out. And when the MOTB is mandated, you're not going to see us out there at all. But you're going to, before that all comes to place, and then you're looking to find us, and we won't be there, this war is going to break out. Especially once they mandate the MOTB. You're definitely not going to see us out there then, because, we are promised that we'll be kept from that day and hour, right? That temptation. We're not going to be tempted to take the MOTB. Some of us will be martyred, and others, will be able to escape because of their works. So hopefully all this has been edifying. For that I want to say, Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakatum, Jehovah Elect, Shalom. And like everything else though, the Kurds abandoned once again by the U.S. because they're so good at exploiting people and then just abandoning them when they no longer need them, just like they did before.
The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces continue to show fierce resistance as the forces of the Islamist-led Syrian Transitional Government attempt to expand its control in northeastern Syria amid a ceasefire. After taking over most of Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor and reducing SDF control to the east of the Euphrates River to a pocket around the town of Kobani in the eastern Aleppo countryside and half of El Hasaka in a lightning offensive, the STG on January 20th announced a 4-day ceasefire as a part of an agreement with the group to implement a merger agreement reached earlier. Clashes ceased after the announcement, and the next day, the United States Military Central Command launched an operation to transfer up to 7,000 ISIS detainees from northeastern Syria to Iraq. On January 24th, Syria's Interior Ministry announced that it had taken over El Aktam prison in the northeastern outskirts of the city of Raqqa. On January 26th, all hell broke loose, with the STG attacking the towns of Karab el Ashik and El Jalabiya to the southeast of Kobani. The drone units of the SDF inflicted heavy losses on government forces, even destroying an entire convoy. The forces failed to capture any of the towns, but took over the Lafarge cement plant to the south of Karab el Ashik. The STG also launched a fairly large attack in the town of El Safa in the eastern countryside of El Hasaka. SDF fighters put on fierce resistance there, but eventually lost the town to government forces. As these battles were taking place, the Russian military withdrew some troops and equipment from Kamishli International Airport and nearby posts in the northern El Hasaka countryside. Also on January 27th, Syrian President Ahmad el-Sharaa held another meeting in Damascus with SDF Commander-in-Chief Mazloum Abdi to push the merger process forward. Despite reports of progress, sporadic clashes returned to northeastern Syria the next day. All in all, trust is still absent between the SDG and the SDF. The latter has clearly taken the decision to fight until the end. While government forces advance rapidly in Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, the situation in Kobani and El Hasaka is very different. Any decision by the government to take over these areas by force will likely cause a massacre.